Ugh. Oh god, what's that? Hi everyone, how are you today? Today is a video not about makeup, I'm afraid. It had to happen. But you've probably guessed from my last tutorial, which I will eventually re-upload. I just need to do everything again and not use that program, because for some reason that watermark on it just took up the entire screen. You cannot see what I'm doing. It's just ridiculous. So I have downloaded another movie maker program, so that should be getting re-uploaded in the next couple of days. But we're moving on to bigger and brighter things, I think. I haven't seen what this is going to be like yet. So this video is all about some of my favourite books of all time. I've tried to go through ones that I have got the proper copy of rather than ones that I've got in the Kindle. But there will be the odd one which I couldn't find, which I will just talk about. But we'll get there when we get there. So I have a massive pile of books in front of me, and I'll try and keep this quite short and sweet. Reading is one of my favourite hobbies. It's something that I've done quite avidly since I was in year 4. When I was in year 4, I actually picked up Morse from Terry Pratchett on the shelf. I mean, year 4, how old would I have been? About 8, 9? It's not a very appropriate book for young children, but my teacher's son had left it on the shelf and I wanted to read it. I mean, I read it, so that started my love of all things book. So let's get on with it. I'm just going to pick these completely at random, but I will tell you which ones I love the most out of all of them. So the first book is Jojo Moyes' Me Before You. I mean, I saw the film of this first and then read the book afterwards, and to be honest, the movie doesn't cut out much. It's just still a very fantastic story that makes you cry at pretty much every page. Maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but it will have you crying quite a bit. And I don't really want to say too much of the story because I know a lot of people don't know what this is about. But it's basically a story about a young woman who's called Lou, who ends up going to look after this lad who's a quadriplegic, and just how their relationship grows over 6 months. It's definitely worth a read, and it's one of my more recent favourites. It's just fantastic, and it's got Sam Claflin in the film, and I love it. Okay, moving on. Another more recent favourite, and one that I've read only in the last 2 months, but some authors just have that effect on you straight away. And that author is Sarah J Maas, and this is the 4th book in the Throne of Glass series, and it's called Queen of Shadows. Honestly, if you haven't picked up any of her books, you need to. They're just brilliantly written. She is a young woman. She understands what issues women want to be told about. These characters have periods, and it's how the men react around them. That's not the main focus, but it's not something that you come across in fiction very often, these characters having periods. But yeah, I'm going to stop talking about periods because this could get very weird. And the main focus of these stories is that the character Selena Sadothian is an assassin, and she has a hidden past. And in this book, without being too spoilery, she goes back and gets vengeance on all the people who've done her wrong in the past. It is fantastic, and honestly one of the best books that I've written, and it's meant to be for young adults. These are not young adult fiction, they are more for new adults. I don't know what the actual term for new adult is. Maybe it's just, sorry I'm spitting, maybe it's just that period between being a teenager and an adult, probably like the 20s. So I'm probably getting a bit too old for them, but I love them anyway. Okay, now on to the more older favourites. This was one of the first Stephen King books that I bought, and as you can see it has been well read. And in fact, I think actually some of the pages are starting to fall out. I bought this in America when I think we were in Kansas, or was it Florida? Anyway, somewhere in America I bought this just for something to read. I mean, I bought A Bug's Life, which, to be honest, that lasted us about an hour into the air flight. It wasn't going to last much longer. So I got this, which is a little bit more nitty and gritty than the Bug's Life novelisation. This story is based on the old conspiracy theories that the American government were using LSD to experiment on young adults. And it basically follows two people that were involved in that experiment and they've got psychic powers. Somehow this LSD stuff's given them psychic powers. And they get married and have this girl who is a fire starter, hence the title. And it's basically her and the dad. The mum's being killed. You find that out pretty much from the first moment of the book. They're running from the FBI, and it just follows that story all the way through, and it is fantastic. I mean, if you don't want to read the book, which I would recommend, but there is a film that is very, very similar and doesn't really go away from the page that much. So if you don't want to read the book, watch the film. It's got Drew Barrymore in it when she was about 7. It's really, really good. Okay, the next book, which, funnily enough, this is the only series of this author that I actually like, apart from one of the standalone novels called Threshold. But this series and the third book in the series is actually my favourite, and that's Dark Witch Rising by Sarah Douglas. I think some of the other series, as it comes across that she is quite a bad writer, and the storylines are quite simple and quite crude. But this one, even though it's very, very weird, it's a brilliant storyline. This follow a set of characters who have been reincarnated over the years in different English big events. I think the first one is about the folklore that a guy called Brutus brought the Trojans and made London. I mean, that's probably the least realistic one, but if that's true, it's blooming awesome. The second one is about the Battle of Hastings. Yeah, the Battle of Hastings. And this one is about the Great Fire of London and the rise of Charles II. I might be wrong about that, I'm sure it's Charles II. But this is my favourite one of the books. It's basically when everything starts to kick off. You've got all the characters back in London and shit goes down. It's fantastic and a page turner in every chapter. And just to warn you, there is a lot of incest in here and a lot of sex, but it's very, very well written. If you can make if George R. R. Martin can make incest really weird, but something that you want to read about, so can Sarah Douglas. Let's just leave it at that before I turn out being even more weirder than I actually am. I've loved Sophie Kinsella for quite a while. She was an author that I got into when I moved to London. I actually met her, and this story I'd actually read before I met her, and there is a video somewhere on YouTube where I'm in advert for one of the other books, but I do mention this one in the video. This to date is my favourite Sophie Kinsella book. It's called 20s Girl, and it sort of links supernatural with realistic stuff, if that makes any sense. And it's basically this girl finds out that her great grandmother's died, and she's the only one that goes to the funeral. But then for some reason the ghost of this grandmother shows up in 20s gear and haunts her until she can find her necklace. That's the only way she can get peace. And then this grandmother is so weird. She tries to get this girl to fall in love and uses all of the 20s makeup, everything. It's just hilarious. And it's one of the best Sophie Kinsella books ever. I just love it. The next book that I've grabbed is by Terry Goodkind. I love these books up until, I think it's called Confessor. It's that last trilogy of books at the very end that wrap up the storyline. This was the best one before everything went weird. And this is Faith of the Fallen. I think it's about the 5th or the 6th book. And the characters, Richard and Carlin, are separate. They're this really in-loved up couple. Carlin is being injured and can't really go far, and then Richard's taken by one of the Sisters of the Dark. If you haven't read this probably makes no sense, but he's taken by the sister who wants to teach him what her life is really like and to see if he can bring him round to the bad guy's point of view. And it all builds up really slowly but really well written until everything kicks off, and it's just one of my favourites. And if you've ever seen me write this quote, "Your life is yours alone, rise up and live it," that's from this book. Still one of the favourites. Okay, on to something that actually made me cry. And again, I watched the film before I read the book of this one. This is The Book Thief, and it is probably one of my favourite interpretations of death ever. The whole novel is narrated by Death, and it's how he pictures life in, well, World War II Germany through the eyes of this young girl called Liesel. Is it Liesel? I think. And so much happens in it. I can't really talk about too much without giving a lot away, but it is one of the most heartbreaking books I've ever read. And it just, as someone who's grown up in England, you only ever hear the point of view that the Nazis were the bad guys. You don't really hear what it was like in Germany for young kids growing up in that regime. This is a very good point of view for that, and it sort of gives you a bit of sympathy for normal Germans who weren't part of the Nazis. But definitely give it a read, it's fantastic. Okay, you probably guessed from my video yesterday that this is going to be in it. This is probably one of my newest favourite books. It's fantastic. Sarah J Maas again, she's probably the only author that I've got on here twice. And Court of Missing Fury is brilliant. It's one of the smuttiest books I've read, but it's done in such a way that it doesn't come across as crude, unlike some of the stuff in Sarah Douglas's books. So this is the story of Feyre, who's a regular woman who's been turned into a fairy at this point, and it just follows her love story between two blokes. I know it's not really a love triangle, but I can't really discuss it without calling it a love triangle, because there are two love interests at the very beginning, but we'll see. And again, Sarah just describes falling out of love and falling in love really well, exactly how it would happen in real life. Definitely worth giving a go, and the ending is just so mind-blowing. I cannot wait for book 3. It's brilliant. I need more Rhysand in my life. I'm actually thinking about going for the fan fiction just to get more Rhysand in my life. The one that I don't actually have the book for is, of course, Lord of the Rings, which is one of my favourite films, it's one of my favourite books, and it's one of my favourite graphic novels. Well, The Hobbit was my favourite graphic novel, but I'm sure they'll do Lord of the Rings eventually. Oh, and it's my favourite animated film as well, well, one of them. I've seen all Lord of the Rings versions and they're all brilliant, even though that film gets quite a bad rep, but it's brilliant. But anyway, the book, it's when I was a teenager I used to read that every year. I think I've probably read it about 10 times, and it's just so brilliant. I used to actually know the Ring poem off by heart. I don't now, but I could recite that word for word at one point. And it is just a brilliant book. It's so long, but I loved it. I loved the characters, and I wish there had been more of the women in it, but it was a good book for the time. I mean, it was the 1930s, I think. I mean, women weren't really in books that often. It was a man's world, so you can't blame J.R. Tolkien for not being more of a feminist. But yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that book. One of my favourites, it'll always be one of my favourites. Lord of the Rings, J.R.R. Tolkien. Fantastic book. Okay, and the last book on the list, how many have I been through? I think that's quite a few, I've probably got more than 10. But the last book is by Val McDermid, and I loved the Tony Hill Wire in the Blood TV series, and I eventually got hold of the books. They're all in charity shops. I think you can pick these up for about 50 pence each. but this was a one where I think in the TV series it sort of like cuts out half the storyline, and you learn out a lot. And you learn a lot about Carol and Tony's relationship in this book. And Carol is, oh god, someone's been reading this. I don't know what that is. But this book, it follows Carol where she's got an assignment in Germany where she's got to try and find information about this drug lord in Germany. And apparently she looks very similar to his ex-girlfriend, which hopefully will buy him her trust. And Tony is also sent over to Germany at a different time to try and find out this serial killer who's actually killing clinical psychologists. What a great place for them to go. And their storylines sort of intertwine, and it's just such a mind-blowing book again. And I just can't believe how it ends. But actually I can believe how it ends, because these characters are just doomed never to get together. I mean, I'm up to quite a few into the series now. I've read the latest one. I've got a feeling Carol and Tony are never going to get together. And they're so in love, but they're never going to get together because they're too fucked up. But yeah, this is definitely one of my favourite Tony Hill books and Carol Jordan. And you can, if you've watched the Wire and the Blood series, you'll know that Val McDermott really doesn't like that Irish character. She turns up in the later books and you can tell she doesn't like her. And you think, yeah, they should just kept Carol Jordan in the TV series, but they don't, because Hermione Norris didn't want to be in it anymore. But yeah, what can you do if an actress doesn't want to be involved? You don't blame her. She wanted to do better things. Although nothing's better than Wire and the Blood. But anyway, that's enough of me rambling. That is some of my favourite books. I'm sure there's more if I rambled through my shelves, but you've got a taste of how random my tastes in books are. There's nothing that I haven't tried. But let me know what your favourite books are. I'm sure if there's some that I haven't read, I'll probably read them if you think they're really good. Just let me know. I'm always looking for books to read, especially now that I've got to wait till May for the last Asimov book. I just really want Rhys-Ann back. But anyway, give this video a thumbs up if you liked something different, and I'll see you next time. Bye!